If you watched the Super Bowl halftime performance, you may remember when Kendrick Lamar said,
40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music.
But what even is 40 acres and a mule? Let's get smarter in seconds about this piece of Black history. In 1861, the United States had a civil war over states' rights, specifically states' rights to continue enslaving people. And following that war, Union General Sherman met with Black leaders to discuss what would happen to the mass population of Black people who had formerly been enslaved. After much discussion and advocacy by those Black leaders, General Sherman issued Special Field Order 15. It said, the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of Negroes now made free by acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. Each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground. So the mule part was added later. The army would be loaning mules to these families so that they can till the ground and get their lives going. But the whole thing basically became known as 40 acres and a mule. This would have allowed formerly enslaved Black families to have access to the wealth that they generated through forced labor and enslavement. But you see, 40 acres and a mule was a promise that was never fulfilled. Black Americans have never received reparations for the violence done to our ancestors or received any share of the wealth that we helped build for this country. In fact, we've been systematically excluded from programs like the GI Bill that were supposed to help all Americans rebuild wealth thanks to redlining, segregation, and Jim Crow laws. The vast majority of Black families that were promised 40 acres and a mule never received it. And the small number of Black families who did were forced off of that land as it was returned to the former Confederate traders, and they were forced into sharecropping agreements. Sharecropping was a completely racist and unfair institution in which Black tenant farmers were provided a share of the land and a share of the crops for little to no pay in exchange for working the land. With lynchings, Jim Crow, segregation, and racism, it was basically slavery part 2. Due to the incomplete nature of how Black history is discussed and taught in the United States, many people are under the false belief that 40 acres and a mule was carried out and that Black people have received reparations. But we haven't. You can learn more about how Black families resettled following the end of enslavement and more in my Black history book, Making Our Way Home, The Great Migration and the Black American Dream, including an in-depth timeline, key terms, and key figures. You can probably find it at your local library.
Smarter in seconds.